Can I start by asking about something I was saying just now, that a lot of the world's population is clustered just where it's going to get hottest. Some people listening will say, well, that's just yet more alarmism. Is it?
It's not. I mean, we're already facing climate change that is undeniable. It's affecting not just people in Africa, not just people in the equator. We have, more than 100 million people under heat alerts in the United States. We've got 52 degrees surpassed in China. South Korea is flooded, that people are being sort of dragged out of tunnels. We have storm alerts everywhere. Europe is in the 40s. It's heading up to 48 degrees in Italy
I think
this week.
I think earlier today, I'm sorry to jump in, earlier today I think we saw the highest global temperature recorded anywhere so far, which is in China. It's around 54, 55.
Yeah, I mean, these hot temperatures, we're getting record-breaking temperatures all the time. So, June was the hottest on record. Then July started with the hottest day. The next day became the hottest day. It's continuing like this. We've got marine heat waves. We've got land heat waves. The reality is the habitable niche, the zone in which humans have adapted over thousands of years to live, is shrinking and moving north. We already see the migrations of all the other species of birds, of insects. Even the tree line is moving. We see actual noticeable Arctic greening from space. This is a migration pattern that is inevitable. Climate migration is underway. At the moment, something like, until the last couple of years, something like 1% of the Earth's land surface was classed as uninhabitable due to heat alone. By 2070, some estimations are that 20% will be uninhabitable, and that 20% is home to around a third of the world's population, and the world's population currently is 8 billion. By then it will be 9, perhaps 10 billion. So we're talking about 3 billion people living in places which are uninhabitable just due to heat, and that doesn't bring in flooding, it doesn't bring in fire, drought, all the other pushers.
And the wars, of course, that happened because of global warming, where people are fighting about
50 conflicts going on at the moment around the world that are generating, of course, their own displacements. And climate change really is it drives everything. It's a multiplier of various hazards, and it pushes people to leave. And at the moment, most climate migration is kind of hidden because it's within nations. People are displaced and they move within their nation. But that's already changing because these events are becoming multiple, more severe, more extreme, and they're affecting whole regions. So we are expecting an increasing unlivability around the tropical zone, around coastlines, river deltas, where some of the most populous cities are located. And where will they be moving? Up to the north.
They'll be moving north to Europe, above all, even though Europe itself is very, very hot around the Mediterranean at the moment. That is where people are coming. And so, to people who sit here and they watch the boats coming over the channel and they think, this is terrible, we must do something about it, we must pull up the drawbridge or stop them coming, your message would be, you've seen nothing yet. There's going to be a much bigger migration on the way. And if that's the case, the really big question is, what do we do about it?
Right. Well, we are experiencing this very strange time politically, where we have the rise of the sort of the right-wing nationalist populist parties they're really scapegoating asylum seekers and refugees. It is the oldest trope in the world when you're failing, your policies are failing.
They're using the fact that people are very scared and are scared about the pace of change and scared about their neighbourhoods. And that's being exploited, Andrew, but it's a real fear. It is a real fear.
You say that, Andrew, and there is fear, and that fear is being stoked by the government and by a large proportion of our media, and certainly within Europe, that's true. However, I would say that the public is not nearly as xenophobic as our leadership would show. Surveys repeatedly show that Britons are generally not xenophobic. More than half think that refugees make a contribution and should be allowed to stay. Support for refugees has actually increased over the past 5 years, despite Suella Braverman and her predecessor and their policies. 2/3 believe that asylum seekers should be allowed to work while waiting to see if their claims are successful. So I think actually the British public is not nearly as xenophobic as Suella Braverman, and do not share her dream that she outlined around
yet,
Christmas time,
is there not a kind of inevitable conflict going to happen between populations in the more temperate countries? I mean, I'm thinking about the fact that, Team Trump is already planning to complete the wall against Mexico if he gets in again. You look at Giorgia Meloni's policy in Italy. You look at the fall of the Dutch government and so on.
We have the rise of these populist leaders and these right-wing policies who are really stoking this and creating a conflict and creating... And they do it in a very clever way. They prey on people's natural fears of being overrun. Actually, if you look at the data on this, immigrants do not reduce employment. They do not raise lower wages. They do not increase crime rates. Actually, the opposite to all of those is true. The other thing I would say is that this is
just before we finish,
inevitable. Migration is inevitable. Yeah.
So it is inevitable. And in terms of the numbers of people on the move in Africa and across the Middle East and Europe, we're looking at migration rates much, much higher in the next decades than we've seen so far. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So we are looking at an increase. The numbers are not known because they depend entirely on us, right? So it depends on how much we help places adapt, how much we mitigate, what other policies we put in place. I would say that 11 children die every week crossing the central Mediterranean sea route. And the UK does have an international obligation to help asylum seekers in the 1951 Refugee Convention. But I would also say we need to be
I'm going to stop
pragmatic.
You there.
We need to manage this. We cannot ignore it. We need to talk about it and have bilateral, regional and planetary agreements on how we are going to deal with this inevitable movement of people to make it work.
Gaia, thank you very, very much indeed for that. It was really interesting. Thank you so much. Lots of food for thought.